Welcome to About You. I'm Connie Hogan. Well, as we kick off the long-awaited spring season here in Bloomfield, the subject today is going to be all things travel. My guest, Kathy Myers, currently serves as the Director of Business Development for Next Travel. Kathy has a long, extensive experience in all aspects of the travel industry, including being District Manager for Air France. I met Kathy years ago when we were both involved in the French-American Chamber. Kathy, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you.
We've kind of talked through so much as being here today. Kathy, start out by telling us a little about how you got into travel and where you grew up and your college and all that kind of stuff.
Sure. So, when I was a young woman graduating from high school.
Oh, you mean 5 years ago?
Yeah. It seems like 5 years
I know,
ago sometimes.
that's for sure,
Yeah.
yes.
Graduating from high school, starting college, I really wasn't sure what I wanted to do.
Mm-hmm.
But I had a couple of interests, but I did know this. I really wanted to travel. I had lived my life in Southeast Michigan.
Mm-hmm.
My family vacationed in Michigan. We didn't really travel too much out of
Probably up
state.
north. Probably.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So it's kind of that stuff that many families do here in Michigan.
Nothing wrong with that.
And so I just really knew I wanted to do something different. And I always, was still kind of on that edge of the era where I always thought travel sounded so exciting and different and that kind of thing. I was very fortunate as a young girl to have an opportunity to study Spanish as a foreign language in both grade school and in high school. And so that kind of helped catapult me into my career because I started, so I went to college for a couple of years, ultimately was able to land a job with American Airlines as a flight attendant. And at that time, American Airlines flew to 2 destinations where they needed people who spoke Spanish. One was Mexico and one was Puerto Rico. So during my training, I qualified to be a Spanish speaker, although I would tell you that my Spanish was just conversational. So that's kind of how my career got started.
How exciting, yeah.
Yeah, and so I started like that, thinking that, I'd be going to a lot of places and, obviously I was traveling. The problem with that kind of job is that you don't stay anywhere very long. So although you might, see something briefly, it's more like, here's maybe where I want to come back and spend some time. But you don't really do it as a job. You're not
It's
really.
very different. I know because I traveled a lot with GM, and it's like, people are like, oh, you were all this time in Toronto. Well, I mean, we did some things. But
yes, you were in a
working
conference
in a
room or you
plant.
were in an office.
Right, exactly.
So, yeah. So, but I mean, it was a really great experience for me as a young woman. Although I will tell you, I don't think it was the right fit for me, but it got my foot in the door in the travel industry. And so I so I was living in Chicago then.
Okay.
So I had an opportunity to live in Chicago in my early 20s. And then I decided to move back to the Detroit area for some personal reasons. And the travel industry is composed of people that when they get into the business, they either love it or they hate it. Most of them love it and stick around. So over time, people really get to know each other. So if you don't know somebody at a certain company or whatever, it's very easy to get to meet others and that sort of thing. So I was able to work my way into another airline in a more like a sales job.
That was Air France?
No, that was Alitalia actually. It was actually worked
wow.
with Alitalia for many years before
Okay.
I worked for Air France.
Oh my goodness, wow.
Yeah, and I think that again, when I tell people that I worked in sales in an airline, they're like a little bit puzzled, like, what did you do? Because they don't understand that the airlines, whether it's a domestic airline like Delta, American, or United, or an international airline, they have a very, various types of clients, but the clientele that is most profitable for airlines is the corporate client. So the airlines all have teams of people that work directly with corporations to develop contracts to commit to X amount of business per year. So that was the kind of role that I started then. And I ultimately got a degree in marketing. And so that sales and marketing kind of background was really a really good fit for me in the type of work I like to do. And then working for an airline was always really exciting. So I feel so fortunate that I've had, the opportunities to work for an Italian company for many years.
Wow.
And then on to a French company. And so it's been impactful for me to, I think, for most of my career to work in an environment with lots of different types of people. Because even if I wasn't working with those from those countries, I was always working in an international environment.
Wow.
And I really
That's
enjoyed
really exciting.
that. Yeah, it's
Not
fun.
very many people have that. I mean, I had a great career with GM, but some of it, especially starting out, was pretty, I don't want to say boring, but kind of. When you're like in a finance staff, you're sitting at a desk all day, I mean, that's really cool.
Yeah. So in the day, when I started, the type of work that I would do would be calling on and having appointments with different corporations to identify how we might work together. And then the other kind of what was called the middle market was working with travel agencies.
I was just going to say, because I had a little experience with it. I ran some big programs in GM, and we had TTM, if you remember them.
Yes, I do.
Don't tell me you worked for them.
No, I didn't, but
Total
I knew them
travel,
well.
But I would work, I guess I was the customer. And
Sure.
we had these big programs in Washington, and well, several places, but Washington, D.C. in particular. And what you're saying just makes sense to me. I'm calculating in my head, because they would bring in all these doctors for one of the programs that we had. It was like to recognize like Nobel laureates and so forth in the field of cancer research. General Motors Cancer Research Foundation, which no longer exists. But anyway, they would bring their part in between me and those people was total travel management. So that's, you would have been working.
So total travel management and other companies, those would be the companies that would act as the intermediary between the airlines, the hoteliers, the car rental companies. So the airlines and hotels, et cetera, we would put the contracts in place with corporations, and then the travel companies would act to execute them. So all of the travel would go through them sort of as the middleman. So I got to know all of the different travel companies in Michigan and surrounding states as well. And I have to tell you, there are a lot of really interesting people in the industry.
I even from my limited, I could see that, yes.
Yes.
So now is Next Travel that you work for now, that you haven't been with that long,
Right.
or would they be kind of comparable in that space to TTM?
We're in that space as an intermediary, but the industry has changed a lot over the years. So as a result, obviously, Next Travel is not the same type of company as TTM was years ago, but it's the same concept. Next Travel is a company that is really a spin-off of what was another large travel management company here in Michigan, headquartered in Ann Arbor, called Conlon Travel.
Oh, I think
Heard
we
of
did a lot
Conlon?
with them too.
Yeah.
Not me personally, but General Motors did.
Conlon was very well known in the state. It had grown to become the largest privately owned travel company, as TTM was in the day. Total Travel Management Company was. At a later time, Conlon was. So after my tenure with the airlines, I evolved into that area, into working in that middle segment of the business.
So we were talking earlier about just how things have changed, like in terms of, I guess, what the value that someone like you would add and what the opportunities are, like for younger people and stuff.
Well, actually, I was thinking about sharing that with you because I don't think that it's so easily recognized what types of jobs, what types of opportunities there are in the travel industry. And I don't think we've done a real good job of sharing that information. There are some Michigan universities that offer degrees in travel and tourism. But I see many of those who graduate from those programs that they go into hotels. It seems to be like, I don't know, it's the easiest way to go, or there's so many hotels. It's, you know, a quick entry out into to the industry. But there are lots of different jobs in the industry. It's a huge, I don't know the numbers offhand, but it's a very, very large industry. And it's important to the economics of the local places. Like, you know, we see here in Detroit how many things are happening here now, and all the incoming business is fantastic for the city. So, you know, there's incoming and then there's outgoing, you know, both areas. So
I think some of it is probably too because of the internet and the change in the structure, like, of everything in business. Like, and I know a little bit because I'm retired. I don't have the need to know. But like, if a person, like if I was 22 right now and I was looking, you know, they have the websites Indeed and all those glass doors and all those, and you know, you go that way, or your networks. You know, this is where I think
in job searching.
Yes, I think in your business probably. I would imagine that a lot of the people coming in would be more like by default. Maybe if they knew someone more in the hotels, the airlines, or whatnot, and they're like, oh, well, this position's open or something.
Yeah, I would say maybe. I do find that a lot of students, a lot of people who did travel or had some type of an international background or foreign language ability, they tend to be attracted to the industry. But there's, I think that maybe an issue is that you really, you know, you almost have to start, I don't want to say at the bottom, but in an entry level type job.
Right.
Unless you have a really strong skill set in an area where you're brought into a company for finance or some
IT.
other.
I would imagine IT would be
Sure,
huge. Technology,
finance, IT, yeah, those kinds of things. But I mean, I think that if you talk to lots of people like myself, my career path is not unusual, that you kind of worked your way through the industry and worked your way up the chain into different jobs.
It's funny we're talking about this. Just a couple nights ago, I happened to see this thing on PBS, and you know, you're just like flipping through, and there was a story, and PBS has so many good things like this, even though I don't like them, but it was about how stewardesses, flight attendants, way back, you know, we're talking now early 70s and stuff, that flight attendants, the female, and they called them stewardesses back then, that they did so much on women's rights and women's workplace rights and women's equality in the workplace. It is really a phenomenal story about how Gloria Steinem got involved and took that on. And the congresswoman from New York, I can't think of her name now, that died. But anyway, they really took that issue on because of how the airlines were unbelievably discriminatory towards women at that time. It was well documented. They literally would have like the job requirements and the job elements, and if they would call it a purser for a guy, and then for a woman it was a stewardess, and they were paying them like probably, you know, 30% more, the men and stuff. And they took that on, and there were certain women in that business who were like icons. It's like women's suffrage or whatever.
Sure.
But this was not, it's not that long ago, I guess. It was like 50 years ago. But like the early 70s and stuff, and they lobbied and, you know, I guess they went on strike and whatever. And I can vaguely remember, because I was in high school, but I vaguely remember them, you know, protesting and marching. And I just remember how there were strikes, and like my grandfather and stuff couldn't even fly because, you know, it's like they were on strike against. Eastern Airlines was a real culprit, I think. Eastern and who else? What? National, who doesn't? Northwest Orient.
Yeah, Northwest Orient,
They were
which later went on to
big-
become Northwest and then Delta
And then
Airlines.
Delta, yeah.
Yeah, you know, all of the areas in the airlines and the crews, the pilots and the mechanics and flight attendants, et cetera, they are pretty much, in most airlines, they're unionized. And I think that the unions did help with, you know, these types of things. I mean, I think some of the issues with for women in those days that were challenges were there was a kind of a stereotype for the look.
Oh, they really talked a lot about that.
Yeah.
And that a lot of the changes that occurred afterwards, after the suits or whatever, the weight requirements, the looks, the whole thing was out the door because
Yeah,
of that.
so you had to be, if you were a certain height, no more
Weight,
than a certain
especially
weight.
yeah.
And also, I can tell you that in the timeline when I was flying, there was still hair. So I've always had longer hair, but if your hair was, I think, longer than your shoulder, then you couldn't wear it down. You had to wear it in a bun or
Oh, my
some type of
goodness, wow.
that sort of thing. And hair, and then earring size, you know. You could only wear an earring that would be no larger than a certain size, a small hoop or a stud or that sort of thing. So yes, I think that
Isn't it amazing to see, though, that
Yeah.
that's just one example of how relatively small time frame that things have changed for women's rights. And I mean, oh my God, it's just like going completely on the other side of the spectrum now in terms of everything, you know.
Yes, I think so.
In some ways it's good.
Yeah,
but,
so I don't think, you know, those things are such a big criteria. But, you know, I do think it's important that, so, you know, something that's ingrained in you when you go through flight attendant training is that you're not there to look good and to serve food or drinks or whatever. You're there for safety.
Safety, and that was
Yeah.
highlighted on that
And
story,
and that's really the important
That's the most
thing.
important thing,
Yeah.
yeah.
It's about learning how to make sure that the cabin is safe and that in the event that there's an emergency that people get out of the airplane safely. Yeah.
Well, that is interesting. Now, Kathy, let's move along and talk about some of your social, like your philanthropic, because like I said, that's how I first met you. And now, are you still involved in the French-American Chamber?
I am.
Oh, my goodness.
I am.
I know you have these really nice events, and every time I see the pictures from like our Detroit or whatever, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I missed that again. So afterwards, you have to tell me,
All right,
when is it going to be?
I'm going to have to get you on the mailing list.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes.
When is the one this year? You have
yeah,
the big gala.
the big gala is going to be May 16th.
Oh my gosh, I hope I'm not out of town. I think I might be out of town then.
It's May 16th. It's going to be at the DAC. Our keynote speaker is going to be a international vice president of General Motors.
Oh, who is that?
Don't
Oh, that's
remember.
okay, okay.
It's a
Yeah, I
name-
probably wouldn't even know.
It's not a name that just easily rolls off my tongue, unfortunately. But I'm sure it'll be very interesting.
Those were so nice.
Yeah, yeah. So just to share information with, you know, for people who don't know about the it's the French-American Chamber of Commerce of Michigan. It's part of a global organization with a network of sub-organizations within Michigan, primarily in locations where there is a significant French business community. And the purpose of the organization is to promote commerce between French and American companies. That being said, it is a French organization, and so there's a high significance on fine wine and
I
dining,
remember
you know.
when they had it at Bloomfield Hills Country Club, and at the Village Club.
Yes, yes.
And I remember the fine wine at the Village Club. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So it's
You'll be paying more for it this year. No,
yeah. So it's yeah. So it's always you know, really a lovely event.
It is.
The reason I've stayed involved over the years is that I really found the membership's really interesting.
It is.
People. You have those from the French companies, but you also have people in different companies around Detroit that are not French, but they want to be involved in this ambiance, this atmosphere. There's a lot of what I would call those who are suppliers to the major industries.
like, what's it, Faurecia? Were they still involved? I know I used to know a
yeah,
lot of them.
Faurecia's
Yeah.
now changed their name. They're called Forvia now.
See, I didn't even know that.
Yeah,
Wow.
Forvia.
Yeah.
But a lot of the law firms, accounting firms, those types of companies that are professional service firms that want to do business with the different companies. They're active. So it's a very interesting group of people. Yeah.
I think that's an easy sell for you guys, meaning, because I was involved with a kind of a reciprocal, as you know, at the time. That's changed also, international visitors. But we just loved that. We thought it was just the most sophisticated. And as you said, they would have the German chambers. They would have the I know the British American, right?
Yes, the British American Chamber of Commerce.
Are they still involved with you guys too?
Well,
That's so funny.
There are several European chambers around the city. The British, the German, the French, the Italians come off and on. They do it for a while and then back off and come back. Those that you mentioned are the main ones, and then there's also an active Asian Pacific Chamber of Commerce here in the area. So I've always
that makes sense.
Yeah, I've always been very attracted just to the whole international community. So just very interesting. So that's something that I've been interested in, and I'm also I'm a member of the DAC, and so I like to attend events there. They have great speaker events and that kind of thing as well. I'm active in the Detroit Economic Club.
That's awesome, because I go, when I can to the Economic Club, and I was there when certain candidates were there this year. We won't say. But the big one when our current president was speaking, and there was like 1,000 people.
Yeah,
I
was
gosh.
there. Yeah, I was there.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I was there.
That was awesome. I mean, just the way that was put on, and they had to put that on so quickly for political candidates because they don't know they're coming.
Right.
And it was amazing. And Motor City Casino, big kudos to them. They did such a great job.
Well, the Steve Gregorian, who's the president of the Economic Club, and his team are excellent. They really do a great job of putting on events and drawing in really great speakers. I'm pretty active in that organization as well. Yes. So this week I was at the Economic Club. We had Gary Peters, Senator Gary Peters was a speaker.
Oh, that's okay.
The governor, Governor Whitmer, is going to be speaking at the Economic Club on the 14th of April. And the Detroit Lions are coming in April. So there's a real mix of type of speakers.
Stuff.
They're really fun. Yeah. So those two, I would say, are those that I'm probably the most active in. And I'm also a member of Christ Church Cranbrook in Bloomfield Hills. And that's a fantastic organization. It's a great spiritual organization.
It is,
And it's also, there's a tremendous number of other activities that they host. And a really interesting group of people.
Yes,
yeah, very welcoming church. Yeah.
And that's great. I mean, that's, but we all know it's just such a social environment.
Yes, it is.
That's awesome, Yeah. But so are so many. I mean, Sacred Heart, and St. Hugo's is, and that's awesome. So you're involved with a lot of Detroit-based things, and Bloomfield Hills, and that's awesome.
Yeah.
You're not just sitting and watching the world go by as a retiree, right?
No.
Because you're not retired.
No, I'm not retired. I was working for the travel company Conlon Travel, that then became part of a national company. For the last few years, and I just kind of decided that it wasn't the right. I was working now for a very, very large organization that was not so locally centric. It was involved in a lot of things, throughout the country, and it's not that I don't like that. I do, but I felt a need that I really kind of wanted to return to my roots and. Be able to be more involved with the local community and doing business with people in Michigan. So that's why I joined Next Travel just fairly recently. And it was a spin-off of the original Conlon Travel that I had been with for a number of years. And
you were
had
Employee
such a
of the
great
Year one
relationship.
time, right?
Yeah. Yes, I was.
I just saw that just now, yeah.
Yes, I was. Fantastic.
That's awesome.
Yeah, fantastic organization, family-owned company. So Next Travel was originally started by Chris Conlon, who started his father started the company in the 60s, late 60s, and then he took the business over. But it was the corporate side of it was sold, and then Next Travel was a spin-off of that company.
Okay.
And that focus was more on the leisure side, luxury leisure travel, as well as groups, meetings, and incentives. So as that evolved, the company took new ownership. The gentleman who was the partner with Mr. Conlon in his business. And what's really exciting about them is that, the owner is a young man. He's 35 years old.
Oh, wow, that is young. Yeah,
and he's really an entrepreneur. He's got great business acumen. Cool. And has been buying travel companies all over the state of Michigan and in northern Indiana. And so the focus is more on more specific areas, those areas that I just mentioned of travel, as opposed to the other area that was more general, transient business travel. So I'm doing something still in the same industry, but a little bit different. And so, that's always a challenge to do something new and different. And we're having a lot of fun, and it's a great group of people.
That's awesome.
What's unique about it is that because many of these travel companies have either gotten so big or absorbed into others or maybe gone away, this company just was formed in 2018. So it's a really new and young company. So that's exciting. And I'm working with, the leaders are all relatively young. They're in their 30s and 40s. Yeah. So that's really fun too.
So Kathy, as we're winding down a little bit, is there anything you'd like to share with our viewers in terms of just, upcoming travel, like you were saying, luxury, leisure, any tidbits, any little gems that you would leave them with?
Yeah. So, I guess I would say don't wait too long before you go on those big trips, in that bucket list. Some people are very good about checking those things off and, and taking trips, but you're never going to be younger. You're never going to feel better.
You're right. That this is as young as you're ever going to be and as old as you're ever going to be, right?
So I really encourage people
good advice.
To do that, while they feel good and they're
healthy and,
Yeah, and they can really enjoy things. And I think travel is so valuable. You learn so much from it. I've learned more from my travel experiences than, almost anything else in my life. So
I have so many of my GM colleagues who just, they have been just what you said. It's like they go to, the Middle East, then they go to Rome, and it's like one right after the other. I'm like, rest a little bit. But it's like,
well,
it's
if
wonderful.
They can do it, that's great.
Yeah,
but I've always enjoyed the experience of, doing something. I like to go on a trip and kind of have a mission, like something in mind in particular that I might want to do. That's also really popular right now. If you're going on a trip, like, do a cooking class or do a
wine tasting in Aruba or whatever.
Or an art tour or, things like that, whatever your interests are, to really personalize it. So I just think that those are the kinds of experiences that to stick with you forever. They're very memorable.
Kathy, thank you so much for joining us today. It has been so much fun and so informative, and we wish you all the best of luck.
Thanks so much, Connie.
Thanks. And thank you for watching today. Thank you.